Hi, so I'm Dan. Did this change things? Yeah, great. Okay, and I'm going to talk more about seed economics. So I'm going to start with a few slides introducing our farm, and then I'm going to go through a bunch of slides with a lot of numbers. All the charts that have a lot of numbers in them are in the proceedings, so you don't have to, if you want to analyze them heavily, you can do that later on. I'm going to go through them quickly, and yeah, so there you are. So I'm part of La Ferme Cooperative Tourne-Sol, Tourne-Sol Cooperative Farm. Tourne-Sol is French for sunflower, and it's also a play on words meaning turning the soil. And we're a farm that's run by 5 farmers. We're a worker co-op, so there's the 5 of us that farm together. We've been doing this for 11 years. And then we also have a team. We have 7 employees for 2016, so we're 12 people in the field or in the summer. And a couple of them work through the winter also, or one of them currently. We rent our land. We rent 16 acres or 17 acres. We have 12 tilled acres, and we have about 7 acres that are actually in crop. And only about 3/4 of that is actually in seed crop. So the rest, okay, I'll get to that in a second. I'll just plug. I am a co-author of Crop Planning for Organic Vegetable Growers. So some of the stuff I'm going to present, some of the analysis, or some of the things that we talk about in this book, but for vegetables as opposed to for seeds. But yeah, so we're predominantly vegetable growers. Currently, we sell our gross about $450,000, but 3/4 of it is vegetable sales. We have about 1/8 is garlic. We sell it as table stock and as seed stock, and then the rest is seed. And so just to wrap up the vegetables, we sell them through farmers markets, and we have 350 CSA members. So as vegetable growers, this gives us a good idea what's a good vegetable in terms of what varieties we like and what makes good seed. And some quick pictures about seed production on our farm just to give an idea of what we're like. So wet seeded crop. We do grow some smaller lots, but we do grow some lots of like a couple pounds of tomato seed. You know, the squished. We screen things, ferment them in garbage pails, and we dry them in this homemade dryer with forced air. This is a Mizuna seed crop. You know, we harvest it by hand, dry it in a greenhouse, stomp on it, and then we screen it, winnow, and then we spread it out. So it's fairly basic. We have a few more high-tech equipment, but most of what we do is very manual. We do have a print catalog. Well, this year we actually don't have a print catalog. Usually we do. We have a web store, and then we go to different farmers markets and seed events to promote, to sell seeds, and we do sell seeds to other seed companies. And of our selection, about 70 of the varieties we grow directly ourselves, about 10% we have other people grow for us, and about 20% we buy from people in other climates that can grow better seed than we can in our climate. So that's kind of who we are. So broadly what I'm going to talk about is selling seed wholesale, which is like to other seed companies, versus selling seed retail, you know, online orders, racks, and markets. And I would say that as a retail seed company who grows seed, we sort of do both. Well, we do sell seed to seed companies, but we treat our seed production as a wholesale market that is then selling it to our retail seed business. And it's a really good way to look at it because they're 2 different types of businesses, and there's different profitability in them. And you can be unprofitable in one and very profitable in the other. And it might all work out in the end, but it's good to know where you're dragging. So starting off talking about growing bulk seeds for wholesale prices, I'm going to go less into detail on this, kind of be more superficial. And one of the things that I tend to use is profitability and space benchmarks. Space and time are what we don't have a lot of, so we look at how much we can make with those. I'm not going to talk about time. And I'll just put a warning that I will use metric weights and imperial distances. And I really like working with grams for measuring things, but feet is a great way to count the distance. Now, thinking about dollars per acre is a great way to kind of compare stuff, but if you're not growing acres of stuff, it can be difficult to think of what that means. So we convert it into a certain amount of dollars per bed foot. And a bed foot is a slice, the full length of the bed, but 1 foot long. So if you have a 5-foot bed spacing, it's about 5 square feet. And so with a 5-foot bed spacing, about $20,000 an acre is about $250 a bed foot. $60,000 an acre is about $750 a bed foot. And so, as an example for vegetable growers, if you were growing lettuce heads and you had 900 heads of lettuce in 300 bed feet and you're selling them at $250 a head, there's a potential of $750 a bed foot, which if you look at that, that's $60,000 an acre. Now, this is assuming you've harvested all of them and sell them all, which is not necessarily the case. But if you look at this, and if you're making $60,000 an acre, that's a nice number. But it's also the target that you're looking for really depends on the acreage and mechanization level you have. So if you have 1 acre in production, you want to be making a lot of money per acre. If you have 10 or 20 acres in production, you can be making much less per acre. So there's no one right answer, and often the higher the dollars per acre, the more work that's involved per acre. So you have to know how to interpret those numbers. So to use this for seeds, so if you have a brassica seed crop and you're getting about 3 kilograms, that's about 7 pounds off of 75 bed feet, and you're selling about $40 a pound, that comes to about $4 a bed foot. So it's in like the $40,000, maybe $35,000 range, which is a nice place to be at. You take that same weight and you pack it 4 grams, so like a 1/7 of an ounce in each packet, suddenly you're at $30 a bed foot. So that's a couple $100,000 an acre, which looks great on paper. And we're going to talk more about that shortly. So this is a sheet of crops that we grow, and we're in a different climate than here. We're outside. I didn't mention we're outside of Montreal in Quebec, in Canada. So we have a hot summer, very humid summer, and so these are kind of yields that we might use. And this is what this example here is growing seed on 1/8 of an acre. And so within 1/8 of an acre, a mix of different crops being sold wholesale at a certain price. It's about $4,400 for that 1/8 of an acre, which comes to about $35,000 for the whole acre. And so looking at these numbers, here's beans, which is, here it's about $15,000 an acre. So looking at bed feet, if you're growing, so 80 grams per bed foot, and if you're selling about $10 a pound, that's about $1.78 a bed foot. So that's less than $20,000 an acre. Now you can do different things. You can sell it for more money, and therefore you make more per acre. You can also improve your yields, and that also increases your profitability, or at least your sales. And then you can do both, and that has a big impact. It's making more than twice what you were in the first scenario. But knowing your numbers, also, if you know that it's a profitable crop for you, you might also want to lower your price. So increasing your yield can also mean you can lower your price, be more competitive, and make the same amount as if you were yielding less and making more. But so this is something that's not necessarily prescriptive, but it's good to understand this relationship. And it's possible at your scale, like we deal with about a dozen different seed companies that we sell seed to, and a number of them are quite small and might just be buying a couple pounds of something. So they're happy to pay a higher rate for it. Whereas if you're selling something, 10 or 15 pounds to somebody, you have to have a really fantastic variety to warrant a high price. So those are all things that go into the negotiation that Sebastian was mentioning. So that's where I'm going to skim through the wholesale part. And what I would just summarize by saying is that growing seed for bulk prices, for wholesale prices, in my experience has been very comparable to growing market vegetables for sale in CSA or for farmers market. And like those market veg, there's a broad range of crops. And I'll come a little bit back on that profitability range. So I'll talk now about selling seeds at direct market prices and go a little bit deeper. And so the first thing is I have a chart here which the same crops and the same harvested yield from the bulk production, and then just converted how many grams or ounces per pack, and then what that looks like is dollars per acre. So that $13,000 an acre of beans is now $80,000 an acre. The tomatoes, I don't remember what it was, but now it's $1.3 million an acre. These are amazing numbers. And so when you talk about wholesale, in that first chart, it was $13K to $95K an acre versus direct market of $70K to $1 million an acre. But with the wholesale, the work is done in the summer, and then the fall comes, you clean, you pack up, and it's done. Whereas with the direct market, the fall comes, and that's where the real work begins. And you've already worked all summer to grow the seed. And then in this example, it's about 15,000 packets to sell that seed. And so 15,000 packets, maybe you do have a 15,000 packet client, but it's a number of clients buying small volumes. So there's a lot more work that goes into it. So I'm going to break some of that down. So some of the considerations. The first is, what is your packet? This is not our first iteration. This is our second iteration a number of years ago. Just a craft envelope that we have, a sticker in the front, a sticker in back. People like descriptions and they like directions, but it takes space. So these are things that you want to put into your packet. At this point, we now print out, a nice packet, or we have a nice packet that's custom printed, and then we print the information for each thing, and it looks a lot slicker than what happened before. But we're still not at a point where we have pictures on everything, which people would love, especially if you're doing racks. And then you have to think about your labor force. And packing that seed is really important. And some people do it better than others. But so on the seed packet cost, there is a cost for the seed itself that you are putting in there. And in this case, I'm transferring the $4,400 that our bulk seed production produced, and that we then, transfer over to this business. And, if you didn't want to grow the seed and just retail the seed, well, then this $4,400 would be the seed that you're buying in from other companies or other growers to produce. And so at this point of the operation, bought seed for resale versus produced seed for sale kind of has the same equivalent, because you're looking at the profitability of the actual seed packet operation. Packing the seed takes time. And in this example, I've put in as 50 packets an hour. Good packers on our farm can be packing over 200 packs an hour. That's not always the case. And it depends if you are doing labels that you're putting on. Bigger seeds sometimes takes more time. So it's good to be more conservative until you actually know the number. And then a really important thing is germination tests. You should not be selling seed that you haven't germination tested. This will compromise your business in the short term. And you either can have that done that by labs or do it yourself, depending on the regulations of where you are. So this is kind of just actually getting the seed packets filled and made, getting your product together. Then there's your marketing, and you might mail order or website. They're kind of the same, but a little bit different. You might sell seed racks. And then there's also events you might go to. You might go to farmers markets. You might go to, some people, maybe not in this room, but go to flower shows and garden shows. In Canada, we have these events called Seedy Saturdays, Sundays that happen across the country, where there'll be a dozen seed companies that come to one event, and they sell seed for 1 to 2 days. And gardeners come, and there's always an educational component. There's a seed swap component, but it is a seed sale. And for a lot of small companies in Canada, the bulk of their revenue is coming from this place, because you don't have to do a lot of marketing, and you don't need the overhead of a website store, and you can just meet people. And I think one thing you really have to think about is the print catalog. I know most of us who love seeds probably have an experience dealing with people's seed catalogs, and it might be something that's helped nurture that love. There's a big cost printing out thousands of catalogs and mailing them out, and it can have a return, but it's something to really think about whether that's the route you want to go. And in the examples I'm going to show, when you're starting up, the lower your overhead, the more money you can save. But some of this investment in print catalogs will pay off, if not in the short term, down the line. So they're things you have to really think about. So I got a sheet for seed marketing costs. And there's kind of a few different things, like order fulfillment, so just taking the time to pull the seeds, put them in an envelope, print out a label, deal with shipping options either online or going to a post office and mailing it out. That all takes time. And the more orders you have, which is usually the more sales you're doing, the more it can be a headache. And I know that when I was leaving Monday to come down here, there was a bit of panic around 3 p.m. knowing how much I could actually fill. And I'm sort of ignoring the orders that are coming in right now until we get home on Monday. And so it's something that it's a whole other part of the job. If you're going to events, there's the time you're there, there's a travel time. And then if you're doing seed racks, there's a lot of work dealing with people. In addition to just preparing racks and selling them, there's a lot of customer relationship nourishment and buildings you have to do. And then there's overhead. And this is a very broad category, what you put into it. And I think the biggest thing is where you do your work. So this is not our first seed office. This is probably our second seed office, run out of our apartment, I don't know, about 7 or 8 years ago. And during seed season, you know, the kitchen looked like this, the living room looked like this, and it was really chaotic. We evolved to a more orderly system. This isn't still in our home, but you know, with different spots for the packs that are packed in advance as opposed to kind of on the spot, and that's really fantastic. I'm a little bit more investing in setting up. And in this last year, we've purchased a job site construction trailer, and it's like 60 foot long, 14 feet wide, and I haven't had time to take pictures inside, so I can't show you that. But you know, now we have our pull room in there, we have an office in there, and it's really great to have it out of our house. But you know, this costs $20,000 to buy and then set up and run electricity out to it. So those are big expenses. And if you amortize it over 10 years, that's $2,000 a year, which isn't so bad. But when you're paying for it, the cash flow is there. And so this is an important thing that you have to deal with as a retail company. Is there's more space involved. So here's some of the basic overhead costs. Some big things to think about is all the business development you're doing, the ads, the branding, business cards, your seed room, how simple it is. In this case, I put down $500 rent from ourselves for the year. But so these budget numbers are more like an example than actually where we're at right now. But then there's a lot of other overhead. So you can run something really simple, but there's a lot of other overhead that you have to think about: bookkeeping fees, membership dues, bank fees, and there's all kinds of overhead. And this is kind of the thing that gets to you. And I'll come back to that in a second. So you have all your expenses. So in this case, it's about $20,000 expenses. The revenue you make, you know, so seed orders, maybe you're selling seeds $3 a pack. There's seed racks, maybe you're selling $2 a pack. And then you don't sell all the seeds you packed up or all the seeds you grew. So even though you might have 15,000 packs, maybe you only sold 12,000. So it's $31,000 of income. So looking at this, it comes to about $11,000 of profit in this example. And what's good to note is about $8,000 of your expenses is actual labor. So if it's just you and another person doing it, it's your own business, you are recouping that yourselves. But if you're hiring out, you're paying it. It's a clear expense. And in this example, it took about 700 hours or so. And I think that's a conservative, that's on the low end of what it could take to do this. And this is in addition to, this is over the growing. So what I really want to transmit is it's a whole other job. So if you're trying to tack this onto a vegetable operation, like we do, you know, you're working full time. And what's kind of nice in the case of us is that we do have a vegetable business that's, you know, selling $300,000 of seeds. And it helps leverage all the overhead that we have. So the seed company is sort of subsidized by the vegetable company, though it is profitable in its own. But it's let us grow slowly without having to jump in too crazy because we have this other revenue source. Whereas if we just wanted to jump into the seeds, it would have been a lot more stress to go into. Yeah, so just another way to think about things too is just what the cost is to produce one packet. So looking at all the overhead and seed costs that we do is about $1 to produce the seed packet. And it's about 30 cents for the seed cost. And it's something that you want to really control. Reduce it as much as you can because it's a part that you're not recouping, whereas your labor costs you might be recouping. And if you think about marketing, so if we're selling racks and we're selling $1.75 a packet, minus the packet cost of $1, there's about 75 cents to go into marketing costs and then profit that goes to us. And if we sell stuff through a web store and event at $3.50, you know, it's an additional $1.75 over the racks that we're getting to recoup. Yeah, so there is profit in there if you run things tight. And it's easy to not run things tight. And sometimes there's economies of scales that you have to attain for this to really make sense. So the big reflection that I think is important to make is, do you want to grow $5,000 of seed and then pack it into $10,000 and turn it into a lot more money and take your whole winter to do it? Or do you want to grow $5,000 of seed and pack it into 5 boxes and ship it and then not have to worry about it? And Now, if you're only growing $5,000 of seed, you might have to make a little bit more money somewhere else to make a living. But they are different businesses, and sometimes the numbers, crunching the numbers quickly for a retail seed company makes it look like a get-rich-quick scheme, but it really isn't. And so I always try to discourage people from doing it, but the people who make it, that's awesome. So it's really go for it. And I would just, one thing. I think it's really great to start small and expand gradually. And Sebastian's comment about simplicity, it really resonates with me. We grow hundreds of varieties for vegetable, and we grow hundreds of varieties for seed. And when we're planting it out in the winter, it's crazy. And then when you get to the summer, it's still crazy. So you can do it more easy, and it's probably more profitable and more simple, though many of us have a passion that drives us a bit crazy. So thank you very much. Our website is tournesol.qc.ca, and that's both in English and in French. And I blog about seed at goingtoseed.wordpress.com, and I've written quite a bit about profitability in seed production. So there you are. Thank you very much.